Alex had never expected to be living on a remote research station on the edge of known space, much less sharing a room with an alien. Yet here he was, staring at the doorway as a figure stepped in with movements so fluid they seemed almost musical. Lyra. She was striking even by intergalactic standards. Her skin shimmered with faint streaks of silver that caught the dim light of the station, and her eyes held a curiosity so intense it made Alex feel exposed, even though she hadn't looked at him that way yet. "Hello, human," she said softly. Her voice was melodic, almost like a tune rather than words. "I am Lyra." Alex swallowed hard, suddenly feeling very ordinary. Hi. I'm Alex. Looks like we're roommates." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her hair, or what Alex assumed was hair, a cascade of silver tendrils, shifting with her movement. "Roommates. Interesting concept. I will adapt." He nodded, trying to hide how nervous he felt. Sharing space with an alien, especially one as elegant and beautiful as Lyra, was not something his training had prepared him for. Still, he reminded himself, she was here to work just like him. Keep it professional. The first few days were a mixture of awkwardness and fascination. Alex discovered that Lyra had habits unlike anything he had seen before. She moved silently, often observing the walls, the instruments, even him, with a kind of gentle scrutiny. Sometimes she mimicked his gestures, and at first he thought it was playful. Then he realized she was learning, trying to understand human behavior. Lyra, in turn, seemed fascinated by everything he did. He cooked simple meals and she watched intently, asking questions about the ingredients, the heat, the methods. When he explained, she repeated the gesture slowly, her hands moving in ways that made Alex pause. There was intelligence behind every motion, a deliberate curiosity that made him feel like she was trying to read more than his actions, perhaps his mind. One evening, as he was cleaning the small living area, he noticed her staring at him longer than usual. "Alex," she said, tilting her head in that way again. "I feel different." He froze. "Different how?" She blinked slowly, and a faint glow appeared along the edges of her skin. "The station is preparing for mating season. My kind changes. My senses are heightened. I feel emotions stronger. Thoughts are sharper. I notice things." Alex's pulse quickened. He knew vaguely that Varelians had mating seasons, but he had never experienced one, obviously. And he had certainly never lived with a Varelian during one. "Notice things like what?" he asked cautiously, trying not to sound panicked. Lyra's lips curved slightly. "Your heart beats faster when you are nervous. Your hands shake slightly when you are afraid. Your mind reacts to my presence." "It is fascinating," Alex blinked. He wasn't used to being analyzed so intimately. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Fascinating," he repeated, trying to sound calm. Inside, however, his thoughts were racing. Over the next few days, Alex found himself in strange situations. Lyra would occasionally reach out to touch something, a panel, a plant, his sleeve, just to study how it reacted. Every time she touched him, he felt a strange warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. He tried to keep his distance, but the reality of the station made that impossible. They shared meals, worked in the lab, and walked the narrow corridors together. Other aliens on the station seemed aware of Lyra's changing behavior. Whispered conversations floated by in alien tongues he couldn't understand. Some of the staff gave him odd looks as if to warn him that his life was about to become more complicated. And complicated it was. One night, the station's alert system went off. Alex's heart raced as he followed Lyra to the control room. A containment breach had occurred in the experimental flora section. Strange plants had begun to grow uncontrollably, sending bioluminescent spores into the air. The corridors were sealed automatically, and the system instructed them to stay in place until containment teams arrived. Alex glanced at Lyra, who stood calm but alert, her eyes glowing faintly in the low light. "We're trapped," he muttered. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "We must wait. Orky, we can act. My instincts tell me this is dangerous, but manageable." Alex felt a mix of relief and fear. Dangerous situations always brought out the best and worst in people. He wondered which version of him she was seeing. Hours passed as they sat in the small quarters. Lyra remained silent most of the time, watching him, observing him, perhaps trying to read his thoughts. Occasionally, she would hum softly, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the vibrations of the station itself. Alex found himself relaxing despite the danger, mesmerized by her calm presence. Then something unexpected happened. Lyra leaned slightly closer and mimicked a gesture she had seen earlier in one of her rituals. Her hands moved in a graceful pattern, her eyes locking onto his. Alex froze, recognizing it vaguely from a brief briefing about Varelian mating signals. It wasn't aggressive, but it was direct, a message, a connection. "I didn't mean to," she said softly, sensing his reaction. "It is then part of my nature. Do not be afraid, I am not like others you may imagine." Alex nodded slowly, trying to appear composed. "It's okay, I understand. Sort of." The hours dragged on, and the tension between them was palpable. He could feel her energy, her awareness, almost like a gentle pressure around him. He tried to focus on the tasks he could do, checking the station systems, monitoring the alerts, anything to keep his mind occupied. Lyra, on the other hand, seemed content to watch him work. Occasionally she would offer suggestions, her alien perspective turning simple fixes into clever solutions he hadn't thought of. Alex began to appreciate her intelligence as much as her beauty. She wasn't just a creature of instinct. She was thoughtful, strategic, and aware of the world in ways he had never imagined. The night grew deeper, and the isolation of the station made everything feel more intense. Alex realized that being trapped with Lyra during her mating season was unlike anything he had prepared for. Yet he also noticed a strange sense of trust developing between them. They were sharing more than space. They were sharing understanding. At one point, Lyra reached for a console that Alex had been adjusting, her hand brushing his briefly. He felt a warmth surge through him, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he guided her hand with his, showing her the correct technique. She smiled softly, a tiny flicker of light in her eyes that felt almost human. Minutes later, a sudden tremor shook the station. The experimental plants had started reacting violently to the containment systems. Spore clouds filled the corridors, triggering more alarms. Alex and Lyra rushed to secure the doors and stabilize the environment. Working side by side, their movements synchronized almost instinctively. He realized that despite the alien nature of the station and its inhabitants, their cooperation was seamless. When the tremor passed, they returned to their quarters, exhausted but relieved. They sat quietly, neither speaking at first. The silence was comfortable, not awkward, a rare thing for Alex. Lyra's glowing skin dimmed slightly, signaling a return to her normal state, but he could still feel the lingering intensity of her presence. "I appreciate your patience," Lyra said finally, her voice soft but sincere. "Humans are different. You're calm. It is rare. It is valuable." Alex smiled faintly. "Thanks, I appreciate yours too." "You're amazing, Lyra, not just, beautiful but smart and brave. You handled everything better than I did." She tilted her head, studying him. "Amazing. That is a word humans use? I will remember it." A quiet laugh escaped him. "You should. I think it fits you." They shared a moment of connection, wordless but meaningful. Alex realized that being trapped in the station with Lyra was no longer just a challenge or an inconvenience. It was a rare opportunity to understand someone completely different, to work together, and perhaps to form a bond that neither of them expected. As the lights dimmed and the station's emergency protocols settled into quiet hums, Alex felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in months. Lyra sat across from him, her silver hair catching the soft glow of the panels, her eyes reflecting something like curiosity mixed with trust. The mating season might be unpredictable. The station might be dangerous, but for the first time, he felt he could handle it, not just survive it, but perhaps even enjoy the unexpected companionship that had entered his life. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the days to come would test both of them, not only as roommates or colleagues, but as beings from different worlds learning to trust, respect, and maybe even care for one another in ways neither could have imagined. The next morning, Alex awoke to the quiet hum of the station. Light filtered softly through the observation windows, showing the vast, empty expanse of space beyond. Despite the calm exterior, he knew the station was still in partial lockdown. The experimental flora section had been contained, but sensors indicated lingering activity. Lyra was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor near the window, her silver hair catching the light as she studied the glowing patterns of distant stars. She seemed peaceful, yet her eyes held the sharp awareness of her heightened instincts. "Good morning," Alex said cautiously, trying to sound casual despite feeling the lingering tension from the previous night. Lyra glanced at him and nodded. Morning, human. Sleep was adequate. And you? Better than I expected, he admitted. Though I can't say I'm ready for another day of unpredictable plants. A faint smile crossed her lips. Perhaps it is more interesting to face unpredictability than certainty. Alex chuckled, feeling slightly more relaxed. The small exchanges like this were helping him understand her personality, and he began to notice that Lyra's attention wasn't simply curiosity, it was awareness, almost like she was assessing him as a partner in this unpredictable environment. By mid-morning, the station issued a new warning. The mating season effects among the alien crew were intensifying. Lyra's energy patterns were spiking, and the station's sensors indicated heightened emotional activity throughout the Virelian staff. Alex realized he would have to navigate both her instincts and the challenges of living in close quarters with her. They were assigned to inspect the experimental flora area again, now stabilized but still showing unusual growth. As they entered the lab, Alex noticed the plants seemed calmer, yet there was a faint shimmer in the air, residual energy from the previous night's containment breach. Lyra moved gracefully, examining the flora with precise gestures. These plants react to energy fluctuations. Your presence stabilizes them slightly, she observed. Alex frowned. My presence? Yes, your energy. It is steady. It does not trigger panic responses. It is useful, she said, her voice calm but with an intensity that made him self-conscious. He nodded, trying to mask the flush creeping across his cheeks. Glad I can help. As they worked together, the tension of the previous night slowly faded into a sense of rhythm. Alex noticed that Lyra was more attentive than ever, her movements precise but delicate. He realized that he was learning to anticipate her actions, understanding the subtle cues she gave, whether in body language, tone, or gesture. During a pause, a sudden tremor shook the lab. Alex grabbed a control panel to stabilize himself, and Lyra's reflexes were instantaneous. She reached out, her hand brushing his arm as she helped him steady the equipment. The touch was brief, but Alex felt warmth spread through him. Thank you, he said quietly, meeting her gaze. You are welcome, she replied. Do you understand why this season is challenging? Alex nodded slowly. I think so. It's like emotions are stronger. Instincts are sharper. Everything is more intense. Lyra's eyes softened. Yes, and yet, humans do not experience this in the same way. Your calmness, it is remarkable. You do not react with fear or aggression. It is refreshing, Alex swallowed. I just try to focus on what I can do to help. They continued their work, moving carefully through the lab. As the hours passed, Alex began to sense a shift in Lyra. Her presence was no longer just an observation. It felt like she was intentionally staying close, monitoring not only the plants but him as well. He realized that in this intense environment, trust had become essential. During a break, Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lab lights. Alex, I feel something unusual. My instincts tell me to draw closer, yet your species, you maintain distance. I do not fully understand this. Alex hesitated, unsure how to respond. I care about your safety, Lyra, and I respect your space. I guess that's my way of drawing closer without overstepping. Her expression softened and she tilted her head. Your approach, it is unusual. It is comforting. I have not felt this with another of my kind. The moment was interrupted by a sudden alert. One of the containment units had started to destabilize. Alex and Lyra immediately sprang into action, working together to recalibrate the systems. This time there was no hesitation. Their movements were synchronized, almost instinctual. Alex realized that they had become a team, each complementing the other's strengths. Once the system stabilized, they paused to catch their breath. Alex noticed Lyra's glowing skin dim slightly, a sign that her heightened instincts were settling temporarily. He dared to speak softly. You handled that really well, he said. I couldn't have done it without you. Lyra's gaze met his and she allowed a faint smile. And I could not have managed without you. Your steadiness, it is admirable. Hours turned into evening, and the station's lights dimmed to indicate nighttime. They returned to their quarters, exhausted but relieved. Alex prepared a simple meal and Lyra watched, her movements relaxed now, almost human in her curiosity. As they ate, a quiet understanding settled between them. The mating season, the chaos of the station, and their close proximity had forged a bond neither had expected. Alex felt a sense of admiration for Lyra, not just for her beauty, but for her intelligence, bravery, and honesty. Lyra, in turn, seemed to recognize something in Alex: patience, courage, and a willingness to engage with her as an equal. Later, they sat near the observation window, watching the distant stars. Lyra reached out, her hand brushing his once more, lingering just enough to communicate connection without intrusion. "Alex," she said softly, "this experience, it has taught me something. Your species, humans, you have qualities I did not expect. Trust, empathy, strength without dominance. It is rare." Alex smiled faintly. "I think we learn from each other. You've taught me to understand things I never noticed before, like instincts, emotions, even the way someone moves through the world. You've made me better." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "Better? Yes, that is correct. And yet there is more. I feel curiosity, interest, perhaps even something akin to affection." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he realized that the connection between them was deeper than he had imagined. It wasn't just attraction. It was respect, trust, and the recognition of each other's strengths. The days that followed were challenging. The station's systems required constant monitoring, and Lyra's instincts fluctuated with the progression of the mating season. Yet each challenge brought them closer, teaching them to communicate without words, anticipate each other's actions, and trust one another implicitly. One evening, a new alert indicated that another section of the station had unusual energy readings. Alex and Lyra suited up and went to investigate. The readings were strange. Residual energy from the previous plant containment seemed to be interacting with the station's power grid. Working together, they navigated the dimly lit corridors, their movements synchronized. Alex noticed Lyra's heightened awareness, her eyes scanning for threats and anomalies. He marveled at her agility and precision. At the same time, he realized that he had adapted to her presence, moving with her instinctively rather than reacting blindly. At the climax of the investigation, they discovered that the energy fluctuations were minor, but could have escalated if ignored. Together, they rerouted the power and stabilized the systems. The station's lights returned to normal and the crisis passed. In the aftermath, they sat quietly in the lab, both exhausted but satisfied. Alex glanced at Lyra, noticing the faint glow of her skin as it returned to its calmer state. "You know," he said softly, "I think we make a pretty good team." Lyra's eyes met his and she allowed herself a small smile. "Yes, we do, perhaps. We have learned more than just how to manage a station. We have learned about each other." Alex nodded. "Yeah, I think we have, and I want to keep learning." Lyra's gaze softened and she reached out, resting a hand lightly on his arm. "And I wish to continue as well. Humans are strange, but in a good way. You have potential for understanding beyond what I expected." The station quieted, the chaos of the previous days replaced by calm. Alex realized that their unexpected encounter during the mating season had changed everything. It was no longer just about survival or duty or curiosity. It was about connection, learning to respect, trust, and perhaps even care for someone entirely different from himself. As they looked out into the endless expanse of space, Alex felt a sense of possibility. The station, the challenges, and the intensity of Lyra's instincts had brought them together in ways neither could have predicted. He knew that whatever the future held, more crises, more challenges, and perhaps more emotional tests, they would face it together as equals, as partners, and as friends learning to navigate the complexities of understanding across worlds. And somewhere deep inside, Alex felt a quiet excitement. The mating season might be unpredictable. The station might be dangerous, but with Lyra by his side, he realized that the unexpected encounter had turned into something far more meaningful than he could have ever imagined.